Hey folks, we're going to get started in just a couple of minutes here. All right, it is 11 a.m. sharp. Let's get started. Welcome to Top Trades Live. It's so good to be back, you guys. I was out last week and Alan filled in for me with Matt. I'm glad he was able to do that to give you guys some good trades or some good trade ideas for the week while I was out of town. I'm back today, but guess what? Matt's out of town. So you're just dealing with me. Must be summertime. Everybody's going out of town, going to the beach. Kids are out of school, all that good stuff. And we're dealing with a little bit of summer chop right now, as you've probably seen in the markets. Big bad semiconductors, not looking so big and bad after last week's action. NVIDIA tumbling from its highs. It's all they can talk about on CNBC. I walked by the TV several times yesterday. We keep it on mute over in the main part of the office here. And every time I walked by, there was a chyron at the bottom that said something about what's going to happen with NVIDIA. Is NVIDIA going to go up ever again? Is it going to go to zero? All of this nonsense. You know, they're filling all their airtime with the one stock that everybody wants to talk about and the one sector that everybody's so focused on these days, which is semiconductors. Because, I mean, as we've been talking about, with breadth being so narrow, semiconductors have been propping up the market along with some of the Mag 7 names. It's the big tech stocks that everybody's been wanting to talk about because that's all anybody's trading right now. That's where all the money has flown into. Well, now we're getting toward the end of the quarter. We're getting toward the end of the first half of 2024. I know it's absolutely flown by. And here we are looking at NVIDIA. And you can see here, we got another big, bad, bearish engulfing candle on NVIDIA, down almost 4%, which doesn't sound too bad until you realize that it opened up toward 140 bucks and then closed down toward 130. So you had one of those days where everybody's piling in, and we had all these gaps leading up to that action. We had these big runaway gaps here at the end of May. The stock just would not stop going up. And then finally, we got a little bit of a flame out. It's recovering some today. It's obviously a little bit short-term oversold right now. Not too badly in the grand scheme of things, but you can imagine why some people are trying to play a bounce on this stock. To be clear, and I'm not going to talk about NVIDIA and the semiconductors the entire time, but I feel like since it is the topic du jour, we have to hit it. But to be clear, I am not super bearish on the semiconductors simply because they're starting to flame out from these extreme overbought conditions right here. We have to remember that overbought is good. Overbought means there's a ton of buying. People are buying these stocks. And while I do think it's important that NVIDIA gets a hard reset in here, that it chops along for a bit, along with some of the other ones, SMCI, MU, some of these bigger semiconductors that have just been plowing higher every single day, every single week. It's perfectly healthy to have them have some sharp resets here to chop along. I think it's possible that we get continued choppy action in the semiconductors. They probably need to fall a little bit more. They might not, but I think they need to. But we could see that over the next few months. And then when the fall rolls around, I would not be surprised to see these names start to scoot higher again and begin to break out. We saw what happened back in the spring. And I want to draw your attention to this because we had very similar action back here into February, March, where we had this big earnings reaction and the stock continued to gap higher almost every single day in early March. And then boom, you get kind of this indecision, this bearish engulfing where everybody piles in the morning and the sellers start creeping in the afternoon. And then from there, the stock by no means crashed, but you can see that it took a solid, 1, 2, almost 3 months of sideways action before it really broke out again. But that's super healthy action. Obviously, we have a stock that was in a very powerful rally right here, and then it needed to chill out, it needed to consolidate, and then finally buyers took control again. We had a nice big gap up on earnings, and then it ran again, and now we're seeing very similar action again where you get a big bearish engulfing candle. Doesn't mean the stock is going to zero, but it probably means that some of the excess exuberance needs to be bled off of a name like NVIDIA. And here we are in a situation where, down a little bit from the highs. Probably not the end of the world. It is the end of the world if somebody was piling in right here while the stock was going parabolic, because they're sitting on some ugly losses right away. But for us, watching something like this, not a big deal. As I've been talking about in the chat, as my trading desk people know, we've been talking a lot about potential rotation for the past couple of weeks, and now it's kind of starting to happen. Yesterday was a big rotation day where everybody piled out of the semiconductors and some of the bigger tech stocks and into a bunch of lagging names. That's great to see. If that is the theme going forward into July, then we're going to have some great new trades that set up on the long side where a bunch of stocks that have maybe been consolidating or moving lower finally firm up and begin to break out to the upside as tech maybe moves sideways or maybe semiconductors give back a little bit more of those gains. It would be great to see that. That's healthy market action. I wouldn't hate that at all. On the flip side, maybe we'll get some more downside action in some of these higher flying names, and we'll have some opportunities to play puts on them, play the short side. That would be great too. I wouldn't mind doing both. We're just going to have to wait and see what the market gives us. My main concern right now is where is the hot money, and is it going to actually rotate into some of these other trends, or is it going to just take the summer off? And the reason I say that is because we look at something like Bitcoin and we see what's happened over the past few weeks right here. A lot of fake outs here. But ultimately, Bitcoin is now back down to the bottom of its range. It had a huge flush yesterday where it was actually below 60K for a while. I think it got down to a low of around the mid 58,000 range right here, which is right down here near those lows from late April, early May. I'm a little bit concerned about crypto right here because we've been in this big, huge, choppy range for a very long time now. If you would ask me, and as we talked about on these calls, I'm sure I don't remember exactly the dates, but if you'd ask me back here in mid-May, if you ask me right here in early June, I would say, yeah, it looks like pretty inevitable that we're going to move toward and at least test a breakout of those all-time highs, which are set back here in mid-March around the 73.3 range. I want to say for Bitcoin, it didn't happen, fell short both times right there. And then you can see ever since the beginning of June, when it started to fail, it just got worse and worse and worse. No traction at all in Bitcoin right here. And then we kind of had the waterfall lower. It is attempting to recover a little bit today. But what does the next few months hold, or the next few weeks? What do they hold for Bitcoin? Can it hold the bottom of this range and recover? And if so, are we kind of doomed to be stuck in the chop right here? I'm not so sure. I don't like the looks of this. I'm thinking maybe we need more downside in Bitcoin. Maybe it needs a bigger reset. There's been a lot of hype surrounding the halving, surrounding ETF approvals and all that stuff. And we have not seen a lot of upside traction since. We've seen some fits and starts. We've seen some good spurts. This was a really nice rally where it faked out below this range and then rallied all the way up to 71. But again, we're not seeing buyers aggressively come in above 70K. It hasn't happened at all. These all-time highs right here of 73, they feel like they're forever away now after this, what has it been, like a 2-3 week plunge right here to the bottom of the range. So again, the longer we're in a choppy range like this, the more bearish I'm going to get because people are going to get worn out. And by that, I mean, everybody who's been waiting and expecting breakouts here, and here, they're going to give up. They're going to say, forget about it. And if they all walk away, then we're going to see lower prices here. We're not going to have the buying power. It's the same thing that when we were talking about the meme stocks. And I know they're different things, but it's still the same animal forces working in the markets here. If everybody expects this thing to happen, and they get disappointed and disappointed and disappointed, eventually they're going to take their ball and they're going to go home. And that's my concern with Bitcoin here. Again, I'm not saying that we're going to see Bitcoin retrace all the way down to 40K. I'm not saying Bitcoin's going to go to zero or is irrelevant. I don't know what the future holds for Bitcoin. Just from a purely price analysis perspective here, I'm thinking that, okay, we're once again retesting the bottom of this range. If buyers can't hold on and really provide some sort of a significant bounce up here back into the high 60s, I think Bitcoin's in trouble, and I think it might need to trend a little bit lower for the time being. So again, I'm not super bullish on Bitcoin in the short term. Long term, we're going to have to wait and see. But after everything we've seen here, and after all these failures, and the fact that it's been quite a while, it's been since early March since we've seen a really big extended thrust higher in Bitcoin. It makes me think that, like, you know, maybe the hot money has moved on from this trade. We've seen what's happened to the crypto miners, to names like CleanSpark right here. They've been stuck in these ranges, and these are wide ranges right here. We're talking, you know, a $10 range right here between $14 and $24. And it just seems to be kind of faded into oblivion. Every time you think that these crypto miners are going to catch higher, they just don't. And then you end up with this choppy mess right here where you have a nice big push over, a week and a half. And then just in a couple days, poof, it's gone. Looks like trouble to me. If we look at like a more stable member of the crypto stock family, something like Coinbase, again, it's kind of the same story where, it's hanging on to these ranges right here. It's still above 200, so it's not the end of the world. But at the same time, we are not seeing these rallies extend. This rally here from mid-May to mid-June, this month-long rally here from 2 to 260, not nearly as big as the preceding rally. And, it's trying to catch and rally here, but there's a ton of damage that needs to be fixed in something like coin. So yeah, I don't really know what to do with it right now. I'm not super excited about trying to jump on any type of long positions in crypto. I really want to wait and see if this is a situation where that hot money is going to hibernate for a while, or move to other sectors. And so that brings us to talking about summer rotation trades. So if we have NVIDIA and we have SMCI and MU and all these other big semiconductors, and they just continue to reset or they continue to chop along, and some of the big Mag 7 stocks, if they continue to chop along, where does the money go? So in the chat this morning, we've been talking about a few candidates. I wrote about a few ideas in the morning reckoning. Where will people be looking to buy if tech takes a backseat in this market? And again, it's not really doing that today. Yesterday, we saw a little bit of rotation, but today you can see our big green blocks here on the heat map. It's Mag 7 stocks. Semiconductors, they're kind of trying to recover a little bit. NVIDIA's up almost 5%. That's nice. But all the stuff that was really bouncing nicely yesterday is resetting a little bit today. So maybe we just have some chop back and forth. We're going to have to see if these rotation trades stick. But for now, I'm interested in seeing, can we get a big rally in energy? Do we see industrials really try to bounce here? Some of those Dow stocks, because the Dow has been outperforming. Biotech stocks. Biotech looks really interesting right here. We kind of forgot about biotech since it just wouldn't behave. I know that if you guys have been with me a long time, we've talked about biotech time and time again, where it looks like it might be trying to break out and lead, and then it fails and rolls over again. We've had months and months of that type of action ever since COVID. So we have energy, industrials, biotech. I want to run through some of those. Also, some also ran tech stocks, maybe some of the growthy names that haven't played nice along with the semis and Mag 7s. Some of those are starting to perk up, which is interesting. So I'm going to look at all that stuff, and then maybe we'll also pull up some charts to peek at the short side, see some charts that really look unhealthy, where we might have some downside action. So let's get into XLE first. Energy looked amazing to start the year. You can see this big run, and this is the energy spider, XLE right here. Incredible run up here from those lows. This was not one of the sectors that really started melting up with the rest of the market back in Q4 of 2023, when we really started getting those huge moves off the lows, November, December, heading into the new year. But it caught higher at the end of January and pushed really nicely. I mean, you can see XLE here going from below 80 to teasing $98 right there. Totally flamed out though, and we've been kind of, you can call this like a shorter term downtrend, consolidation, whatever you want to, ever since then. But now it's attempting to perk up and get out of that range right here. Yesterday, really, really nice move. The entire sector, the energy sector, was up 2.5%. You might have seen some of the bigger stocks. ExxonMobil has a really nice chart. We'll look at that in a second. Trying to come out of this consolidation right here and really start to push higher. Was this enough is the real question. Did this bleed off enough of this big, big move in March and April when these stocks were just screaming higher? Did it bleed off enough right here? And are we ready for another leg higher right here into the summer? I would say it's a pretty strong candidate. You can see here how energy stocks, they're holding their own today. Well, there's a lot of there's a little bit of red in some of these rotation trades. XLE looking really nice and consolidated up near the top of that bar. I really like the looks of that. If we look at like ExxonMobil, it's a very similar chart to XLE right here, except it's green today. I have some annotations on here from a while ago. Not too sure what that big line is right there, or if it moved. But you can see it's kind of the same idea, where huge ripper, a little bit of a short-term downtrend right here, And now this huge waterfall, big volume coming in right here for whatever reason last Friday. But buyers are stepping in up for the past 5 days so far. If it closes in the green right here, looks to me like these guys could take the baton and run with it right here. That would be really nice to see some of these energy names move higher. We have crude that's hanging on tight above $80 now. It's been kind of all over the place. I know we talked about this dip right here and how crude looked like it was falling apart into June. Well, that was a big fake out, and now it's coming back. I don't think we need to worry about, $100 oil or anything like that. We don't need any big oil predictions here, but I think if oil just stays in this $80 to $90 range, it's a good spot for it, even though it's been kind of choppy in the past. But I really like the idea of a nice rotation into energy stocks. I think it would provide some really good trading opportunities. And again, it's a situation where we're not attempting to pick tops or bottoms. We're just looking for some continuation from these moves and out of these consolidation patterns. Going back to NVIDIA right here, this isn't about like top ticking the market and saying NVIDIA is going to go all the way back down to $80. It might. But at the same time, if this continues to struggle, if this is just a relief rally day and we see lower prices here, will we continue to see XLE post those green candles? If so, great rotation trade heading into July, heading into the third quarter. I really like the looks of that. Biotech's another one that's really snuck up on us. Look at this chart. Nobody's been talking about biotech recently. Obviously, all the news has been about AI, big tech, semis, all that stuff. But look at this breakout in the making right here. This has me pretty excited too. Really clean looking breakout if it can maintain and hold right here. This is IBB. These are the big biotechs right here. Obviously not the easiest trade in the world because you can see the type of action that we get out of these biotech stocks. It looked like we were going to get a move higher here as it cleared those January highs in late February, and then look what happens. We get a big fake out, and then it rolls over. Well, it caught after giving up about half of this big move here from those pre-melt up lows. This is when that melt up rally started, right around Halloween of last year. So biotechs, obviously, one of the ugliest looking sectors of 2023. This is 2023 right here. This does not look like the rest of the market. Biotechs were not playing nice. They weren't playing nice with tech. They weren't playing nice with the rest of the market. That was a huge bounce here off of the 2022 bear market. It was still a bear market for biotech. And then we had a huge waterfall lower from August all the way into October right here. That's a nasty move right there. Turned out to be the bottom. And after a quick reset, big thrust higher, kind of faked out a little bit, and then really got going into December. And it looked like it was going to be a new market leader. I mean, I had my eyes on biotech as being like, okay, this thing's going to really rip. It totally took a backseat to the rest of tech, to AI, to semiconductors, the whole lot. But you can see here now, it's really starting to set up again. It's been doing this since last week. If you show me this chart back here, I'd say, okay, well, I'm going to need to see like it really push higher toward that 140 mark, before I can really get too excited about it. And it did it very quickly. We have 4 straight days here, starting with last Thursday. This is when the semiconductors were starting to melt down. And we have IBB up 1%. The next day, gaps higher, up another 1.25%. Next day, gaps even higher, up almost 2%. And today, it's continuing that move right to this breakout area. It might need to sort of chill out and consolidate around this 140 area before starting to run again. But even so, these charts are starting to look really, really nice. In the chat this morning, I posted some of the bigger biotech movers from the day yesterday, and I'll share those with you now. Let's see what I have here. ALNY was a good one. This is obviously gapping up on news. I think this is the heart medication that had the positive data come in. I'm not really sure, but I have to look. But I mean, you can see here, this is what's happening in the sector right now. A lot of these stocks are going from out of favor to in favor very, very quickly. Obviously, that's a news mover, but still, It's following through today with a nice 6-7% move to the upside after that massive gap. What is it? 35% gap. That's not going to hurt IBB at all. ARGX, that's another one that was a big mover yesterday. Kind of the same deal. Maybe this was the heart medicine one, but you can see the big gap right there. And then the follow through. That's what this has been lacking. A lot of these biotechs, you see these big gaps higher, and then they start to fill them. It's only day two, but they're holding the gaps and they're gapping higher again. I mean, to me, this has all the hallmarks of something very quickly coming back into favor amongst traders and the rest of the market. Let's see, ARWR. This is another one of the bigger movers from yesterday. You can see how, I mean, this is an ugly chart. That is not an easy chart to trade. That's no fun to look at right there. You can see how these big rallies seem to give it all back and then some. And you have like an echo rally right here in March, gave that all back too, couldn't break out of that downtrend. Is this enough to really get it moving again? You can see here it's pushing back toward this this little gap here from early April. You know, are these big biotechs going to come back into favor? It's a nice 4-day move. We're going to see a little bit more from a stock like this. But at the same time, you know, much better looking than these huge givebacks that we've seen before in this sector. What's another one that was up big yesterday? Beam, this one still has more work to do, but you can see the entire sector was starting to move again. This is an old name. Used to trade this name a lot, not so much recently. But you can see a nice 8% move right here. It is red today. It's consolidated near the top of its range. Can it complete this base and actually move out of there and move higher? I mean, you can see what happens with these stocks right here. Up 25% right before earnings or on earnings, and then just giving it all back and then some. Just really rough. They've been out of favor for so long. You know, like I said, no one's been talking about these biotech names, and now all of a sudden they're starting to move again altogether. I think it's interesting. Maybe somebody knows something. Maybe this is a bigger rotation trade heading into the summer. Definitely worth watching. But again, IBB, the fact that it's able to break out above 140 here, if it can consolidate and hold or really start to run and push here, I think we have something going on. And even the smaller biotechs, XBI right here, I have some older notations on there. It had a sharper downtrend that it has gotten out of, and it's been trying to climb out of ever since May. It does not look as good as IBB, but it is constructive to some extent. Again, I think there could be opportunity here, not just in something like IBB, but also some individual stocks if they really start breaking out. We know how fast biotech can move. It doesn't necessarily have to be on news either. Some of these trends can really get going. We could have some really good trades. Some really good trades in that group right there. Let's look at some other stuff. Pulling up some comments from you guys. I'm getting relayed some interesting comments that I'm reading right now, some tickers. Let's see here. Somebody talking about BlackRock and whales are manipulating Bitcoin. Why? I don't know. I don't really have any opinion on that. I don't know if it's really being manipulated or if this is just how it goes, how the price action is right now. Either way, the price is what the price is. I don't know how easy or difficult it would be to manipulate the price of Bitcoin. I'm sure that like bigger transactions can come in, like you talk about the whales. And you know, if we have somebody dumping a big position, I'm sure it will affect it in the short term. The main thing that I'm thinking about when it comes to Bitcoin and how it's trading right now is simply the fact that we had this incredible run to start the year. And we've had the consolidation. And now I feel like we've just been in this zone too long and something has to happen. It's either going to break out or break down at some point. We're not just going to chop along like this forever. I think it's a valiant effort right here that there's folks buying it in the low 60s, maybe hoping for some sort of a bounce. I'm thinking maybe if I had to make a guess, not a prediction, I'm thinking that maybe we need to bounce around, maybe in the mid 50s for a while, just to maybe bleed off some of this excess enthusiasm right here, because this didn't do it. Too many folks expecting a breakout into the mid 70s and beyond. A lot of talk about Bitcoin price targets being raised. People kind of scoffed at the idea of $100,000 Bitcoin back in the fall here when it was 39. And then it kind of became like a foregone conclusion that, yeah, Bitcoin's going to run to 100K by the spring. And then, you know, in the mainstream financial media, I was seeing even higher price targets. I think maybe Tom Lee mentioned something about 150K by the end of the year. So I think people got a little too bulled up, maybe, and it needs to rest. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, like I don't think this isn't a like Bitcoin's going to be manipulated to zero type of opinion right here. I just think that since we haven't broken out to the upside here, since we haven't seen the upside follow through, and since it's looked so damn weak for the entire month of June right here, and has gained zero traction. I mean, if this move sticks right here, getting to about 61K, that'll be its biggest day since what? Since June 4th, when it looked like it was building up toward, you know, another run at 70 again. But it's very clear that folks have been selling at 70 since the beginning of March. So until we see it really consolidate up here in the 70 to 72 range and then start to break out, I'm not going to get too bulled up on it. That's just how it is. And again, I can't really speak to who's doing what and how much whales or BlackRock or anybody else is manipulating it. I think the demand is there, but I think the hot money is getting bored or is moving on to other things. I mean, again, we talked about, you know, kind of the moods of the market going back to, you know, something as simple as like, you know, a meme stock like GME and these echo booms, you know, no matter, I mean, the noise level was getting higher and higher as price was just becoming more erratic and sinking back down here into the 20s. So I'm sure there's a lot of interesting long-term arguments about GME and the cash that it has stockpiled now. I don't know how that's going to play out. But for right now, I don't see any of these big pops being able to stick. People are selling. People are selling at lower prices here. And, you know, they don't have the juice. There's not enough buyers to keep this thing propped up at the moment. So long-term prospects aside, you know, when you see something like this bubble up and get frothy and then fail to follow through, then something is wrong and it needs to reset, or we need to wait or whatever else. But I don't see any signs of these things moving again. You can see the volume dwindling and everything else. Same idea for Bitcoin, different animal, but same animal spirits again. You had everybody getting bulled up and it just refusing to budge and running into sellers every time. Now we're back down to the bottom of the range. Screams danger to me, at least in the short term. Could we get a small bounce here? Yeah, and could that small bounce turn into something bigger? Absolutely, but I need to see it because every single other time it's failed, at least since March. So again, there's nothing wrong with giving something like this some time to reset. And sometimes resets take a long, long time. I mean, you know, go back to Bitcoin's first big run that everybody really paid attention to back in, what was it, 2017? You know, how long did it take? We can pull up maybe a weekly chart if it'll show it to us. How long did it take to reset some of these moves right here? Because this was the first big one right here, and it needed to pull back and go all the way back down to 3,000 before posting another big move again. And it's done this time and again, where we've seen these big run-ups, and then it just takes more and more time to consolidate those moves. Maybe this is a situation where, you know, it's going to need to consolidate this move too, or maybe I'm just being impatient and it just needs to chop more along in this range. I think it's been in this range long enough, though. That's just a guess, but I'm thinking it's been in that range long enough, and it might need to move a little bit lower. It might need to scare some people. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you need to shake out the weak hands. You need to shake out the people that bought expecting these breakouts at 70K and then feel like they can't afford to hang around in the mid 50s for a while. It's how any market works, and I don't think Bitcoin's any different. And I think Bitcoin may be more susceptible to that than anything else because, aside from some, you know, occasional news items, you don't have earnings reports every quarter. You don't have a lot of people rethinking their Bitcoin thesis, based upon a management conference call. You know, so price is going to rule the game as far as crypto is concerned. And if price not go up, then trader not be happy, and they're going to sell. So, anyway, that's my answer to that question right there. Some other tickers. Let's move on to some interesting stocks that maybe don't fit the mold for a rotation trade into industrials or energy or biotech, some other stuff we talked about, because I think there's a lot of good looking charts out there that could pop and move higher, despite the fact that we might be in kind of a market reset mode for a little bit here. What about Tesla? I know it's a Mag 7 stock, but it certainly hasn't performed like one, at least not in 2024. What is its year-to-date performance right here? Yeah, so it's down 25% on the year right here. I can come up with a million bearish fundamental Tesla arguments. It's not hard to do. There's plenty of bullish and bearish arguments you can make about this company right here. If I remember a couple weeks ago, I saw someone shared like a list of all of the performance of kind of the also ran EV battery stocks over the past couple of years, and a lot of them are down 99% and bankrupt. It feels like EV mania has I don't want to say died, but it's certainly wilted. You have the traditional automakers basically saying like, we're not going to make any more EV progress here because it's not profitable. We're just going to concentrate on hybrids and internal combustion vehicles. That's all good and well. You can make all these fundamental arguments you want to, and I know that a lot of folks are talking about full self-driving robo-taxi stuff. There's big arguments going on right now on the bull and bear side of Tesla. However, to me, it looks like Tesla is potentially setting up for a move toward $200 and a potential base breakout here. We had the big fake out right there, and you see the red line. We had the big fake out into earnings, which was at the end of April right here. Fake out below those 52-week lows right here. These were new 52-week lows for Tesla. And then it gapped higher, continued to run here. And this was the China full self-driving news, I think, that got it up 15% on the day right there. And it's been consolidating that move ever since. It's looking pretty constructive right here. It filled the gap down to the below 170 into the 160s right there. And it's been chopping along ever since. It's had some good days, up 6 and change right here at the end of May, and then up a couple days in a row in mid-June. And now it's getting nice and tight in this area right here. I like the idea of, potentially taking this for a trade if it closes above that 180, 187. Whoa. Calm down, chart. Above this 187 range right here, if it can close above this area right here, then I think it's time to start thinking about like, okay, if it does that, then it's time for a test of 200 right here. And it's not that far away, obviously. But if it can do that and get above 200, then I think we have a nice solid base breakout, and then this sort of basing pattern will be complete for Tesla. We can start talking about like, how high it can go from there. Obviously, we need to see it to believe it, and there's earnings right here toward the middle of July. But I think this is an interesting setup, and the fact that there's so much negative press surrounding Tesla, there's a lot of bearish opinions about this stock, and the bears were not able to pull this thing down and hold it here at those 52-week lows around 150. And it was able to get these bounces and sustain right there. Kind of tells me that there might be a change of trend brewing for the stock. And again, if we are really in an environment where we're going to see some rotations out of the big leaders, out of your names that have been just screaming higher, like, this is the perfect example of, a Mag 7 that's leading the market right now. You have the biggest company in the world again, I think, because I think it flip-flopped with NVIDIA after NVIDIA dropped last week. But you have Microsoft, which is perched right near its 52-week highs right here. And how much is it up this year so far? Yeah, so we're up 20% year to date. It's outpacing the even the Nasdaq by a good deal right here. If we see a situation where Microsoft needs to digest these gains or reset or whatever, move sideways for 6 months, then it wouldn't surprise me at all if a discarded mega cap like Tesla starts to pick it up and begin to rally from here. So I like the looks of this chart. Again, it needs to show us. It needs to actually break out and do what I think it might want to do. But if it does do that, I think this is an intriguing buy right here at these levels. Speaking of electric vehicles, another EV stock that everybody hates, and it's a long list, is Rivian. And this is an interesting case too, where the stock has been just beaten to a pulp. What's it down so far this year? A lot? Yeah, it's down almost 50%. It's almost been cut in half so far this year. And again, there are plenty of bearish fundamental arguments about these stocks right here. I think especially Rivian. I think it doesn't take a lot of digging to come up with some very bearish ideas related to this particular company, not just EVs. But you can see that this huge gap down here heading into those earnings that were released back in February, we really haven't seen any extension lower from there. Bad earnings again at the beginning of May, and it's been not rallying, but it's been quietly building off of this earnings announcement too. We don't have earnings again until, what is that, early September? Nope, early August. I am curious to see that if we are in a situation where Tesla starts to firm up and move toward 200, will Rivian also catch and move higher? And is this a case where if it closes above 12, which I think might be the area that I like right here, because that's where it gapped down here in February, and that's where it's been turned away back in May, and then again in the middle of this month right here. If it can close above 12, are we going to get a move up toward 13, 14 bucks in Rivian? If it does set up, I think this one could move very quickly. Again, I think sentiment is extremely negative, regarding just EVs in general, but especially this particular stock. Doesn't look great. It's down big. Can this reverse it and at least move a little bit higher? Now, once it gets up here and attempts to fill this gap, I don't know what the heck it's going to do. I don't have any big predictions about Rivian's future. If you look at that chart, it's not looking great. You can see this was the IPO. It was well over $100 right as that bull market was, I guess you call it the COVID bubble, was ending at the end of 2021. So $150 down to $11, not great. But at the same time, if we go back and we look at some of these periods here, here's another very similar period where sentiment was obviously in the gutter, and Rivian managed to put in this base right here and produce a very powerful bounce. Went all the way from 13 to the mid 20s right here. If you can catch a move like that as a trade, it can make your gear. So we know it can moves in both directions, as you can see right here. So it'll be very interesting to see if this thing really starts to catch and move, if it can really produce another one of those rallies like that. And again, longer term, not too sure about this stock at all, but shorter term, we know it can be a big mover. It can be a big momentum name. So can it build upon, yesterday it was up almost 7%. It was one of the bigger gainers out there on the market. And then today it's up another 5. It is, off its highs a little bit, but it is, starting to build off of this and erase, some of this downside action that it saw over the last couple of weeks beforehand. I think it's pretty compelling, as just a pure trading opportunity on the long side, if and when we can get a real close above $12. I think it could push higher and be a very interesting play. So again, not all of the rotation trades are going to be, in these other sectors. I think there's some stuff that's hiding out in tech that's starting to catch and push higher that could be of interest too. Some of them are even the growth stocks that have looked just absolutely terrible. I don't know if it's fair to really use like ARK as like a growth proxy anymore, just because it's become such a joke. But I mean, you can see, the performance this year has not been great for the Cathie Wood stocks. And one of those is Square. Here's a chart of it right here. But what intrigues me about a chart like this is the fact that, it's back down here at these lows and, kind of weekly bouncing off of there. Can it break out of this downtrend right here that it's been in since late March, and really get moving again? The reason that I'd be looking at something like this is because you have a very similar, like, payments type company in a firm that has also kind of been doing the same thing where, I mean, it's a little janky, but it's been trying to come out of this downtrend right here. I mean, I think the firm rallied a lot more than Square did back during the melt up. This is where the melt up started right here. It was $17 and it made it all the way to 50. That's pretty nice move right there. But it's been bleeding that off ever since. It tried to make a decent move here, this 3-day push back toward the middle of the month, and it coughed it all up on the 13th and 14th. Yesterday, it caught an upgrade, was up almost 13%. Today, it's down 3, but it's consolidating near the top of that range. Can it consolidate nicely here instead of like giving us these big red candles? It remains to be seen. But I'm interested in something like this. I think it's just an upgrade that it got. Yeah, Goldman upgrade. So again, hated stock, catching an upgrade right here, posted a nice double-digit move off of it, but can it continue to build and consolidate into the mid-30s right here and not do this? This is what we don't want to see, is action like this, where we have, a day where it's down 9% and then up 10% the next day and then down 9 the next. I know that was around earnings, but like you can see how this stock tends to move right here. Can the buyers really take control of this thing and push higher? It had some decent volume. It had some decent volume on this move right here and got thrown right back. It had some decent volume yesterday. Can they keep it up and really push this thing higher? And can it move off of this level right here, push into the mid-30s, into 40? Can it erase some of this and change the trend? I mean, it's been trying to build for some time, and this was a ripper right here. Did it just need a hard reset, and can it continue to move higher? Is this still a viable company? I think this is one of the ones where, people were talking about all the buy now, pay later stuff, and they were saying like, that was a ZERP business model, and it's dead in the water with today's higher normalized rates. I think it remains to be seen. We all know what happened with Carvana, and I like to say that, and this stock still looks great, by the way. Everybody thought this stock was a zero back in early 2023, and we can see what it's done since then. Changing expectations rapidly is what causes these big moves. This is no different. Well, a little different, but it's very similar to what happened with NVIDIA, where everybody's expectations for the number of chips that they would be selling and the amount of money they would be making changed very, very quickly. And it's almost as if people couldn't buy it fast enough and couldn't push it up high enough because, their expectations would have dramatically shifted. That was the same thing with Carvana. It was a zero, and then all of a sudden it wasn't a zero. That's a pretty bullish event right there. to go from being, the next big Wall Street bankruptcy to getting your act a little bit more together. And you can see what it's done to the share price and every single earnings report after that. This one right here, negative earnings surprise, still managed to rally a little bit off of that, and then ramped up toward the end of the year. More negative earnings surprises right there, gapped up higher. So you can see the change. Pretty incredible chart right there, and that's what I'm kind of on the lookout for with something like the firm. And again, it's early. We need to see price show us that that's what it's going to do. But I'm interested in that, and other growth names, Square. And again, I don't want to be chasing those big gaudy breakouts to the upside necessarily in this type of market heading into the summer. I'd much rather be focused on something like this where, I'm not trying to predict. I'm trying to just prepare myself to react to price if and when it does move, and trying to find some of these setups that could become these next big trades. And not all of them work out. And talking about false breakouts, I think that's something we really need to watch out for. In the weeks ahead, right here, heading into the end of the quarter. I know a lot of you guys from chat talk about PLTR a lot. And what a roller coaster this one has been. I think it's still shaping up, and I know we've talked about this stock before and I've been watching it. The chart is a little bit messy, but I think it's constructive. And this could be a nice rotation trade too. It's been so choppy recently, and we had this big move around earnings where it was, up big and then down big, and it's been trying to build off of that. But I mean, early last week, this thing was cruising. I mean, it was up 6% on Monday. It followed it up with a nice 3% move, and then got tired and totally reset. And it looked like it was going to just retreat back down here to the bottom of its range. It's been building the past 2 days, but it's still really messy. I mean, I like this stock. I think this is one of those stocks that you can buy into the hype, and it could be a very important company over the next 10 years. My one caveat to that is it's just that it's not a secret, and there's so many eyeballs on a company like this all the time. And I think that's why you get some of these more erratic moves. Not only is it, a good momentum mover, but you have a lot of funds that want to buy this thing. And so I think you have a lot of eyeballs and competing interests involved in this stock. And maybe that's why you get kind of an uglier chart off of this. It's not a super clean chart. It's not super easy to trade. If you look at stocks long enough, you can kind of gauge their personality. And PLTR is one of those stocks where, you see a big gap like this, and, emotionally you want to pretend like we don't know what happened right there. Emotionally, we want to try to buy something like this, and then, it guts you the very next day. I know that's around earnings, but it tends to do that, where you get a big breakout, like this big earnings breakout in February, and then you get some consolidation. It looks like it's going to continue that move, and maybe post, maybe it's headed to 30, 35 bucks right here, and then falls right back into range. So while overall, I think the more you zoom out on a chart like this is one of those stocks that's easier to buy the dips than it is to try to buy breakouts on it. It still looks pretty constructive despite the retreat last week. We're working on 1, 2, 3, 4. This will be the 5th positive week for the stock, building off of these lows right here after it gave back so much of that big earnings gap, up 43% a week. So still very constructive. As a buy and hold, as a longer term trend trade, I like it for sure. On dips, for a swing trade, can be kind of a toughie. But at the same time, looking for stuff like this and trying to really gauge, by how stocks like this behave. Are breakouts going to stick in this market? Are we going to be in a market like a summertime chop market where instead of, this thing running up to 27 and then tightly consolidating before going again, it's going to be bouncing around in these big $5 ranges, and just shaking everybody longs and shorts, out of their trades. Is that going to be the situation that we're in with the stock like this? So be interested to see if that's the case. On the other end of the spectrum, got a couple minutes left. I want to hit on a couple more charts that I think are interesting right now. There are some, I think, forgotten like older school tech stocks out there that like are shaping up and looking pretty good. eBay is one of them. I've been watching this one pretty closely. That's a really nice looking chart. I don't really know like what the deal is with eBay right now, but going back, I mean, you can see just how badly this thing was destroyed during the bear market of 2022, and then it really didn't perk up at all in 2023. Had a rough year, and it's just now beginning to firm up this year. So had a couple positive earnings reactions right there, and now it's sitting right by 52-week highs right here, and it's been tailing off every time it has tried to get over this like 54.50 area right here. I'd like to see a little bit of follow through, and you can see where it's been having a little bit of trouble. It's looking like it wants to break out right here. It just needs to show me that it can do it. But I like the look of this, and I feel like this is one of those stocks where no one's really thinking about it, which could work in a trader's favor during the summertime. It's one of those forgotten names that's really starting to firm up and act a lot better. Comparing this to the PLTR chart that we were looking at earlier, you can see this one behaves a lot better. I think it just needs to get over the hump right there and maybe close above like 55, to really get moving and to start the next phase of this rally right here that began back here with the run up to earnings. Then the big earnings gap higher was up like almost 8% and then just ran. So it'd be really cool to see a stock like this get going. It's definitely on my watch list, for a swing trade, or maybe even something longer term. I like these big bases. That's always good to see. And if you catch these stocks, once they show that they're really going to flash that change of trend right there and get moving, those can be really powerful moves. What else do I have real quick? And let me check to see if any more comments here. Oh, there's another comment. What's it mean when the video joins the Dow Jones? I mean, it means it's in the Dow. I know there's been a lot of rumblings about NVIDIA getting put in the Dow. I think that when it does get in the Dow, it's going to go. I mean, I think there'll be maybe some follow buying, but then I think it's going to go sideways for a while. I mean, isn't that kind of how it always goes? Like traders like to find stocks that have been kicked out of the Dow because they tend to kind of wash out and then reset, and you can get some really good trades out of the like I remember GE was kicked out a few years ago, and it started doing that, and then COVID interrupted it. But you can get some really good trades out of taking the opposite side of those moves right there. But like once you're in the Dow, I mean, doesn't that usually signify that like you're maybe that's not necessarily true, but I would think that like your big time growth period is over, and you're a grandfather stock at that point. That's probably not really fair, since we have like Microsoft and Apple and all those other stocks in the Dow. Another mega cap too that's setting up, and I think this will be my last chart that I wanted to go over with you guys, is Amazon. And it has a really beautiful chart right now. I know we're zoomed way out, but not as ugly as like a Tesla, but Amazon's just been sort of hanging out, and it really hasn't been pushing toward those new highs all year like some of the other Mag 7 stocks. And if we go back here, we can see here that it's just now getting back to those 2021 highs. Microsoft, Google, Meta, they've left those highs in the dust, and Amazon's just now getting back to them right here, and has been slowly building up toward, this 190 area ever since then. Maybe this is, I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of eyeballs on this chart, But maybe this is one of those situations where, this could be a no-brainer trade in the summer if it starts to move. I know it's up so far this year, but it's definitely lagging a lot of the other. No, it's up 25% year to date, so it is looking good. But at the same time, it took such a nosedive back in 2022, and the fact that it hasn't fully recovered yet, and it still needs to get back up there, and it's kind of flashing this much bigger pattern right here, and then we have the smaller, you know, higher lows right there, and then pushing up against, this neighborhood of 190-ish, whatever you want to call that. It's not an exact science, but right around there is where it's been running the sellers, and we're getting toward the end of this. It feels like, unless something happens with the overall market, this feels like kind of an inevitable breakout in the making right there, and it could probably run for quite some time right there. So again, maybe we're in a situation where, if folks really are going to continue to sell NVIDIA, which it's recovering really nicely today, actually. But if, this is just a relief rally in the semis and they go back down tomorrow, Thursday, and maybe into July a little bit, and then they reset, I don't see why something like Amazon isn't gonna take the ball and run with it. I mean, it's a really beautiful chart, and I mean, it's obvious. Again, it's a very obvious breakout. There might be a little bit of hijinks in there, but yeah, a great looking chart. Definitely one to watch moving forward. So those are the plays I have for you today. Those are my ideas. I know we're in kind of a rotational market possibly right here. Today's kind of opposite day again. We had breadth issues in the market where people were piling into select mega caps and the semiconductors and selling everything else. And then yesterday we had the exact opposite, where everybody was selling semiconductors and some of the mega cap tech, and they were buying everything else. And then today we're back to buying NVIDIA and your big mega caps, your big green blocks on the screen right here, and everything else is kind of getting sold. So we'll see how it shakes out. It's a little choppy right now, but my mind is on these rotation trades and how they develop over the course of the week. We'll wait and see what happens with price here. That's what it's all about. It's not about making these big predictions that this is going to be the next big thing that goes or that. We have to wait and see. And if we wait and we are prepared and we're ready to react, then we're going to be able to hop on energy stocks if they break out. We're going to be able to hop on those industrials. We're going to be able to play those biotechs and some of those other emerging trends that could be the next big trend of the summer. And so that's where my focus is over the next week or two. We'll see what happens in the markets. Matt will be back with us next week. I appreciate you guys putting up with just me today. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad to be back here and digging up some fresh trades for you guys. And I will see you next week.